I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to end up on a forum like this, pouring my heart out about my broken marriage. But here I am. My name is David, and I used to think my life was pretty solid. I had a good job, a nice house, and a wife I loved. Her name is Jessica. We had been married for 5 years, and on the surface, everything seemed perfect. You know, the kind of couple that everyone envies. That was us. But over the last year, things began to shift. It started slowly. A missed dinner here, an unexplained late night at work there. I brushed it off at first, assuming it was just the stress of our busy lives. It wasn't until I noticed she was suddenly into her appearance a lot more than usual. New haircuts, expensive clothes that I didn't remember her buying, and a new perfume that felt far too seductive. At first, I thought it was just a phase, a newfound confidence maybe. Who wouldn't want to look their best? But deep down, I felt a gnawing doubt. That nagging feeling grew into a full-blown suspicion when I noticed she was taking more phone calls outside and texting like a teenager. I tried to dismiss it. Maybe she was planning a surprise party for me. But then, the gut feeling wouldn't leave me. I started to pay attention to the little things. The way she'd flinch when I asked to see her phone, or how she started to get defensive whenever I brought up our finances. I noticed she was often busy on weekends, claiming she was running errands, but her excuses grew thin. The breaking point came one Friday night when I got home early. I walked into our living room and found her on the couch, laughing and chatting with a guy I recognized from her work, Tom, my financial rival. My stomach dropped. They were too close, too comfortable. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I had to know for sure. I waited until she went to bed, then dug through her things. I found receipts for dinners I wasn't invited to and enough texts that made it clear they were more than just friends. I didn't sleep that night. My mind raced with images of them together and I felt sick. The next morning, I confronted her. I had it all planned out. I wanted the truth and I was ready for the fight. When I asked her about Tom, the look on her face was priceless, pure panic. "What are you talking about, David?" she said, her voice dripping with false innocence. She tried to play it off as a business relationship, but the more I pressed, the more her excuses fell apart. "We're just friends," she insisted, but her eyes told a different story. When I finally laid out the evidence, she turned defensive. "You don't trust me, this is ridiculous," she snapped, trying to shift the blame onto me. I could feel the rage boiling inside me. How could she lie through her teeth so effortlessly? She started throwing out accusations of my supposed lack of support and how she felt neglected. It was a masterclass in deflection, and I couldn't believe I was witnessing it. In that moment, I felt a mix of anger and betrayal, but as I looked at her, I realized this wasn't just about the cheating. It was about the lies, the layers of lies she had spun around our relationship. I remember thinking how ironic it was. I had always been the one working late hours trying to provide for us, while she was the one who turned her back on our marriage. It was more than just the infidelity. It was the manipulation, the deceit, the betrayal of everything we had built together. My feelings swung wildly from disbelief to fury. How could someone I loved so deeply betray me so casually? It was like watching a movie where the villain was the person I thought I knew best, but I wasn't ready to just walk away. I was hurt, sure, but there was a simmering desire for revenge that started to take root in my mind. I thought about Tom, how he was my competitor in the financial sector, and how he had taken advantage of my trust. I was determined to outsmart him and teach them both a lesson they wouldn't forget. This was just the beginning, and I was ready to take control of my life. After the confrontation, I spent the weekend in a haze of emotions. I was angry, hurt, and more determined than ever to retaliate. I couldn't just let Jessica and Tom walk away unscathed. They thought they could toy with my life without consequences, but I was about to show them just how wrong they were. I spent hours thinking through my options. I could confront Tom directly, but that felt too easy, too direct. I needed a plan that would hit both of them where it hurt the most, financially and emotionally. If I couldn't have Jessica's love and loyalty, at least I could destroy the relationship she'd chosen over me. I started with a bit of digging into Tom's business. I knew he had been in talks for a big investment deal that could set him ahead in the financial world. It was risky, but I figured if I could find a way to sabotage that deal, it would send a message. I wasn't just a victim. I was still a player in this game, and I was going to take the reins. I contacted a mutual acquaintance in the finance sector, a guy named Mark, who owed me a favor. I knew he had connections that could help me get information about the deal. I explained my situation, framing it as wanting to know if Tom was a reliable partner. Mark agreed to keep me in the loop, and I felt a rush of adrenaline. This was it. I was finally taking action. While I was waiting for news from Mark, I also started to play my hand with Jessica. I decided to act indifferent, like I was willing to give her another chance. I didn't want her to suspect that I was plotting my revenge. I played the role of the understanding husband, the one who wanted to work things out. Although I was disgusted, I put on a facade of calmness. I suggested we go to couples therapy, and to my surprise, she seemed enthusiastic about it. I figured she thought it was a way to smooth things over, but in reality, I was just gathering intel. During our first session, she was all remorseful, claiming she felt lonely and neglected. I kept my mouth shut, letting her ramble. I watched her twist the narrative to make herself the victim. The therapist nodded along, and I could see Jessica feeding off that validation. It made me want to vomit. Here she was, painting me as the bad guy while she was the one who betrayed our vows. I felt like a puppet on a string, but I was also quietly plotting my next move. As the days passed, I received updates from Mark. The investment deal Tom was working on had a few significant hurdles, nothing unbreakable, but enough to derail the project if it got messy. I knew I had to act quickly before things progressed further. I decided to gather evidence to use against Tom. I started following him, blending into the background, trying to catch him in a moment of weakness. This wasn't just about revenge. I needed proof that would put him in a difficult position. One afternoon, I lucked out. I spotted Tom having a conversation outside a cafe with a potential investor. I hung back, pretending to be busy with my phone while I eavesdropped. They were discussing financial projections and how they could maximize gains by cutting costs. I didn't catch everything, but I overheard enough to get a sense of their plans. The wheels in my head started turning. I could use this information to undermine his credibility when it came time to pitch the investment. I just needed to dig deeper and find something that would truly expose him. Tom was cocky, and I knew. He had made enemies along the way, people he'd wronged in the pursuit of success. That's where I decided to focus my energy. I reached out to a few contacts in the financial world, people who knew Tom's reputation. I subtly hinted that I was looking into his dealings and had heard some chatter that he might not be the golden boy everyone thought he was. It took some time and a few more favors, but eventually, I gathered enough dirt to build a case against him. There were whispers of unethical practices, shady dealings, and inflated numbers in his reports. If I could get this information out, I could not only ruin his deal but also damage his reputation significantly. In the meantime, I kept up appearances at home, still attending therapy sessions with Jessica. She seemed to relish the idea that we could fix things, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in the background. I didn't want to raise any suspicions about my own plans, so I played the role of the supportive husband. But inside, I was cold, calculating. Every time I saw her smile or heard her laughter, it twisted my gut in knots. I was living a double life, one where I was the jilted husband trying to save my marriage, and another where I was the vengeful man plotting the downfall of the two people who had shattered my world. I was ready for the moment to strike when everything would come crashing down around them. It was just a matter of time. And then, the moment I'd been waiting for came. Mark called me one evening with the news I had been hoping for. Tom's deal was on the verge of collapse, but I could be the one to push it over the edge. I felt a thrill run down my spine. This was it. My plan was coming together beautifully. I was ready to execute my revenge and watch as both Jessica and Tom faced the consequences of their choices. The night I received Mark's call, I hardly slept. I was buzzing with adrenaline, my mind racing with possibilities. The first step was to ensure that I had everything lined up perfectly. I gathered all the evidence I had collected against Tom and created a comprehensive dossier. I wanted to leave no doubt in anyone's mind about his unethical practices. It was time to strike. The following morning, I put my plan into action. I headed to the office early, my heart pounding in my chest. I had scheduled a meeting with my boss, Sarah, a woman known for her strong ethical stance in business. She respected hard work and integrity, and I knew she would appreciate the information I was about to present. If I could get her on board, it would carry weight in the industry. When I walked into her office, I forced a calm exterior, though inside I was a whirlwind of emotions. "David, good to see you. What's on your mind?" she asked, gesturing for me to take a seat. I took a deep breath and laid out the evidence against Tom. I presented my findings clearly and methodically, highlighting the discrepancies and the potential fallout of his actions. Her expression shifted from curiosity to concern as I spoke. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, looking at the documents in disbelief. "This could have serious implications for him." "Absolutely. He's been cutting corners to make his numbers look better. If this gets out, it could ruin his career," I replied, keeping my tone even. I didn't want to show any hint of my personal vendetta, but I could feel the anger simmering just beneath the surface. Sarah leaned back, contemplating my words. "If this is true, we have a responsibility to act, not just for the company's sake, but for the integrity of the industry." I nodded, a sense of vindication washing over me. I was doing the right thing, right? She agreed to bring the issue to our legal team, and we set up a meeting to discuss it further. I felt a rush of satisfaction knowing that I was finally taking control of the situation. It wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about exposing the truth. Meanwhile, I continued to keep Jessica in the dark. I played the role of the devoted husband, showing interest in her therapy progress and asking her how she felt about our sessions. She seemed to be genuinely optimistic about our future, which only fueled my anger. How could she be so blind to her own betrayal? I wanted to shake her and make her see the gravity of what she had done. One evening, Jessica came home from work with a smile plastered on. "I have some exciting news," she chirped, her eyes sparkling. "Tom and I just finalized a new partnership for the firm. It's going to be huge for us." My heart sank. How could she be so proud of him? I forced a smile and congratulated her, but inside I was seething. As the days passed, I watched as she continued to gloat about Tom's success. I could feel my resolve hardening. Soon, she would see the consequences of her choices, and I would be standing right there when it all came crashing down. I made sure to be present during her discussions about work, feigning interest while secretly detaching myself from any emotional connection to her excitement. Then came the day of the meeting I had been anticipating. Sarah called me into her office. "David, we need to discuss how to approach this situation with Tom," she said, her tone serious. I felt a thrill of anticipation. "We've decided to bring in the legal team to assess the situation and figure out the best course of action." I nodded, excitement bubbling within me. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. "I want to be present during the meeting. I've gathered all the evidence, and I think it's important for me to be there to explain everything." Sarah agreed, and we set a date for the following week. I spent the next several days preparing, going over every detail of Tom's dealings in my mind. I was ready to unleash the truth. In the meantime, I kept my interactions with Jessica casual, making sure to stay supportive. "How are things going with work?" I asked, feigning interest while she rambled on about Tom's recent achievements. I could see her pride in the partnership, and it made my blood boil. The night before the meeting, I hardly slept again. I went over my notes, mentally rehearsing what I would say. I was ready to watch Tom squirm as the truth about his shady practices came to light. And when it did, I wanted Jessica to see him for who he really was. The day of the meeting arrived, and I felt a mix of nerves and exhilaration as I walked into the conference room. Sarah and the legal team were already seated, and as I entered, I spotted Tom at the far end of the table, looking confident and smug. I could feel my heart racing as I took my seat. The meeting began, and Sarah laid out the situation. "We've called this meeting to discuss some concerns regarding your recent business dealings, Tom," she said, her voice steady. I could see his expression change slightly, the confidence faltering just a bit. As the discussion unfolded, I watched Tom squirm as the evidence I'd gathered was laid out before him. I contributed when necessary, detailing the discrepancies and the unethical practices I had discovered. The legal team asked questions, and I could see Tom's facade cracking. At a certain point, he attempted to deflect, claiming that the accusations were baseless and that I was simply bitter. I leaned forward, my voice calm but firm. "I'm not bitter, Tom. I'm here to ensure that integrity prevails in our industry. You've put your career at risk for your greed, and that's a fact." The tension in the room was palpable. I could see Jessica's confusion as she glanced between Tom and me. I wanted her to understand the true nature of the man she had chosen, just as I felt the tide. Turning, the legal team pulled out the final piece of evidence, emails between Tom and a client discussing how to manipulate the numbers to make their projections look favorable. I could feel the room shift as the reality of the situation sank in. Tom's expression morphed from disbelief to anger. "This is a setup," he yelled, but it was too late. The damage was done, and he knew it. I exchanged a glance with Sarah. She looked satisfied. As we wrapped up the meeting, I felt a mixture of triumph and relief. I had done what I set out to do, but I knew this was just one battle in a larger war. I was about to face Jessica and confront her with the truth. I was ready to watch her world come crumbling down, just as mine had. After the meeting, I stepped out of the conference room feeling a rush of adrenaline. I had just watched Tom's carefully constructed facade come crashing down, and I was filled with a sense of power I hadn't felt in a long time. But as I walked through the office, I knew that my next challenge awaited me, confronting Jessica with the truth. The drive home felt interminable. My mind raced with thoughts of how I would break the news to her. I imagined her reaction, the shock, the denial, the anger. Would she defend Tom? Would she blame me? I steeled myself for the confrontation, knowing that the time for pretending everything was fine was over. When I got home, Jessica was sprawled on the couch, flipping through a magazine. The evening light cast a warm glow through the window, but it felt cold to me. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, glancing up with a smile that was almost too bright. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk," I said, closing the distance between us. I could see her expression shift from casual interest to concern. "About what?" she asked, her brow furrowing. "About Tom," I stated, my heart thumping loudly in my chest. "I just came from a meeting where we discussed his recent business practices." Her demeanor changed in an instant. "What do you mean?" she asked defensively, her voice rising. "What did you say?" "I presented evidence against him, Jessica. He's been manipulating numbers and lying to clients. It's all come to light and his deal is falling apart," I replied, my voice calm yet firm. I wanted to gauge her reaction to see if there was any hint of guilt or shame. She stared at me, her eyes wide, disbelief etched across her face. "No, that can't be true," she said, shaking her head. "You must have misunderstood something. He wouldn't do that." "Really? You think I'm just making this up?" I shot back, unable to keep the anger from creeping into my voice. "I've got the emails, Jessica. I have proof. You need to understand who you're defending." "Stop," she interrupted, her voice rising higher. "You're being irrational. This is all your fault, you know that. If you'd just been more supportive, I wouldn't have felt like I had to go to him." Her words struck me like a slap in the face. "So you're blaming me for your infidelity. You think this is on me." I could feel the frustration boiling over. "You chose to betray our marriage. You chose to lean on him instead of me. This isn't about me. This is about you trying to ruin Tom because you're jealous." She yelled back, her hands clasped tightly on her lap as if holding herself back. The room felt like it was closing in on me. "Jealous?" I said incredulously. "I'm trying to protect what's left of our marriage. I'm trying to expose the truth." I watched as she crossed her arms defensively, her eyes narrowing. "This is just a power trip for you. You want to take him down because you feel threatened by him." I couldn't believe this was happening. "You want to defend him after everything?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, the hurt pouring out of me. "You're defending a man who violated our trust." Jessica opened her mouth to respond, but the words caught in her throat. I could see the wheels turning in her mind. I don't know what to think," she finally admitted, her voice quieting. "I don't know who to believe." That moment, the crack in her bravado told me everything. She was starting to realize the enormity of what had transpired. I looked her in the eyes, hoping to reach through the Confusion. You need to take a hard look at your choices, Jessica. You chose him over me. You have to decide if you still want to be with someone who didn't respect your marriage. I watched as the weight of my words sunk in. She looked away, her eyes glossing over. I was lonely, David. You were always working, and I didn't know how to handle it. Lonely, I echoed, feeling the anger mix with sadness. That's no excuse for what you did. You could have come to me, talked to me, but instead you chose to cheat. You decided to sleep with my rival. Her cheeks flushed with shame, and for a moment I thought I might see the remorse I craved. I know I messed up, she admitted, her voice trembling. But I didn't think you would ever find out. I thought it was just a fling and I could end it whenever I wanted. I didn't mean for it to become so complicated. Complicated? You've shattered our lives, Jessica. I exclaimed, my voice rising again. This isn't just a little mistake. I can't trust you anymore. You made a choice and I have to live with that. Heaviness filled the air as she looked away, tears spilling down her cheeks. I felt a mixture of pity and anger. I never wanted it to come to this, she said, her voice breaking. I thought I could manage my feelings, that I could have both worlds, but I see now how foolish that was. I took a step back, trying to gather my thoughts. What do you want? Do you want to salvage this marriage, or do you want to be with him? I. I want to be with you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. But I don't know how to fix this. I don't know if I deserve to. Honestly, I'm not sure either, I replied, feeling the weight of my own emotions. Part of me wants to give you a chance, but another part of me feels so betrayed. The silence hung heavily between us. I could see her struggling with guilt, and I realized that I had to make a decision. The emotional toll was weighing me down, and I couldn't keep living this way. We need time apart, I finally said, my voice steady. I need to figure out if I can ever trust you again, and you need to think about what you really want. This can't be solved overnight. Jessica nodded slowly, tears streaming down her face. I understand. I'm so sorry, David. I should have never let it get this far. I know, I replied, my heart aching. But it's too late for apologies right now. With that, I turned and walked out of the room, my heart heavy with the weight of our fractured relationship. I knew that we had a long road ahead, and it was uncertain where it would lead. I had begun to piece together a plan for my own future, but first, I had to let the dust settle from the explosion that had just rocked our lives. I needed to regain my footing before deciding on the next steps, and I was ready to face whatever came next, whether it was a chance for reconciliation or a definitive separation. The days turned into a blur after our confrontation. Jessica and I were living in the same house, but it felt like we were in two separate worlds. I was trying to process the whirlwind of emotions I had just experienced. Anger, betrayal, sadness. It all simmered beneath the surface while I attempted to maintain some semblance of normalcy in my life. I threw myself into work, using it as an escape. The fallout from my meeting with Sarah and the legal team was still unfolding. Tom's reputation was in shambles, and I could see the ripple effects reaching our industry. My colleagues whispered about him behind closed doors, and I felt a strange sense of satisfaction knowing I had played a part in bringing his dishonest practices to light. But that sense of victory was tainted by the reality of my own situation. Jessica had retreated into herself, guilt written all over her face. She tried to make amends in small ways, cooking dinner, asking how my day was, but it felt forced, and I couldn't shake the feeling of resentment. I was constantly reminded of her betrayal, and every time I looked at her, I was reminded of the man she had chosen over me. One evening, I found myself in the living room, scrolling through my phone, when I noticed Jessica sitting on the couch, her eyes red from crying. I paused, unsure of what to say. The distance between us felt insurmountable. David, she started, her voice trembling. Can we talk again? I hesitated. The last conversation had been so raw, so painful. What more was there to discuss? But I knew we couldn't keep avoiding the elephant in the room. I nodded and gestured for her to continue. I've been doing a lot of thinking, she said, wiping her eyes. I realize now how selfish I was. I thought I could juggle everything, my loneliness, my feelings for Tom, but I see now that I let everything spiral out of control. Selfish is an understatement, I replied, my voice tinged with bitterness. You betrayed me, Jessica. It's not just a small mistake. You knew exactly what you were doing. I know, she said, her voice breaking. And I'm so sorry. I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I could keep it a secret and that it wouldn't matter in the long run. But now I see how wrong I was. I don't want to lose you. I looked at her, searching for any glimmer of sincerity in her eyes. But you already did lose me, I said softly. Trust is gone. It's not something that can be easily rebuilt. I understand, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. But I want to try. I want to show you that I can be better, that I can earn your trust back. I'll do whatever it takes. Whatever it takes, I echoed, incredulity creeping into my voice. You make it sound so simple. I just don't know if I'm the person you want me to be right now. I'm not sure I can forgive or forget what you did. Jessica nodded, tears streaming down her face. I get it, but let me prove it to you. I'll do everything necessary to make it right. I won't see Tom anymore. I won't let anything come between us again. I just need a chance. Her desperation tugged at my heart, but I felt a wall built up around me. You can say all the right things, but actions speak louder than words. You need to show me that you mean it. Right now, I don't see that. I will, she insisted. I'll prove myself to you. I'll cut off all ties with him. I'll go to therapy on my own if I have to. Just tell me what you need and I'll do it. I considered her words carefully. Could I really trust her again? It felt impossible, but at the same time I knew that I had to make a decision soon. The longer we lingered in this limbo, the harder it would be for both of us. Okay, I finally said, my heart heavy with uncertainty. Let's take it one step at a time. But I need space to process everything. I can't just jump back into things like nothing happened. Of course, she replied, her voice relieved. I understand. I'll give you the space you need, just please don't shut me out completely. With that, I stood up, needing to put distance between us. I'll be in my office if you need me, I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. I needed time to think, to really consider if this was worth salvaging. Over the next few days, we maintained a fragile truce. Jessica kept her distance but made an effort to show me she was serious about changing. She canceled her phone plan with Tom, something I didn't ask her to do, but it was a small gesture that went a long way in showing her commitment. Meanwhile, I began to reflect on my own feelings. I felt betrayed, but I also missed the good times we had shared. I thought back to our early days, filled with laughter and love. I remembered the reasons I fell in love with her in the first place. But I couldn't help but feel haunted by the image of her with Tom, the man who had become my rival in more ways than one. It wasn't until I had a conversation with Mark, my colleague, that I realized just how deep the impact of her actions had been. We were grabbing coffee one morning when he asked how I was holding up. I know it's been a rough time, man. How, Jessica, dealing with everything? He asked, a sympathetic look on his face. I shrugged, unsure how to articulate the confusion swirling within me. She's trying to make amends, but I don't know if I can really trust her. Again, I admitted. Mark nodded as if he understood better than I did. It's tough. Trust is a fragile thing. You can rebuild it, but it takes time. Just make sure you're not rushing back into something you're not ready for. His words resonated with me. I didn't want to end up back in the same cycle, feeling betrayed again. I needed to be cautious, to really think about what I wanted moving forward. That evening, I sat down with Jessica again, determined to have a heart-to-heart conversation. I've been thinking, I began, gauging her reaction. We need to be honest about what this means for us moving forward. I'm not ready to jump into a reunion, but I need to know that you're committed to making things right. I am, she replied earnestly. I'll show you, David. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. I want to work through this together. We talked for hours, laying our cards on the table. It was clear that we both had a long way to go, but I could see a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, we could start to rebuild what had been shattered. But only time would tell if our love could withstand the storm. I knew it wouldn't be easy, and I had to guard my heart. But a small part of me still believed that we could find a way back to each other. In the weeks that followed, Jessica and I embarked on a tentative journey of reconciliation. It was awkward at first, each of us walking on eggshells as we navigated our new reality. She kept her promise of cutting off all ties with Tom, and I began to see glimpses of the woman I had fallen in love with. But the shadow of her betrayal lingered, and I couldn't ignore the ache in my heart. We continued attending therapy, and I saw how committed Jessica was to her healing. She opened up about her feelings of loneliness and inadequacy, and I tried to be patient, listening to her and offering support. It was hard, though. Each session felt like a double-edged sword. Part of me wanted to heal, and another part of me was still furious about the past. One evening, after a particularly intense session, I found myself sitting across from her at the dinner table. Jessica had made one of my favorite meals, but the usual excitement around it felt muted. We made small talk, but my mind was elsewhere. I watched her as she laughed at a joke I had made, and for a moment I felt a flicker of the old warmth between us. "David," she said, her voice softening, "can we talk about what happened? I want to make sure we're both on the same page." I nodded, taking a deep breath. "I think we need to. I've been feeling a lot of things, and I don't want to keep bottling them up." She looked at me, her eyes serious. "I know I messed up, and I don't expect you to forgive me overnight, but I want to know how you're feeling about us." "I'm still processing everything," I admitted. "It's hard to ignore the fact that you chose someone else over me. I can see that you're trying to change, but trust is hard to rebuild." "I understand. I feel horrible about what I did, and I know it will take time for you to come around," she replied, her voice trembling slightly. "But I want to prove to you that I can be the partner you deserve. I'm committed to doing the work, and I hope you'll give me a chance." As I listened to her, I felt a mix of emotions. Part of me still wanted to scream and lash out, but another part of me recognized her sincerity. I had to find a way to balance my feelings of hurt with the desire to move forward. "Let's take this one day at a time," I said finally. "We've both got a lot to work through, and I want to see if we can find our way back to each other. But it won't be easy." "I'm ready for that," she said, her eyes shining with determination. From that point on, we began rebuilding our connection. We set aside time each week for date nights, something we had neglected in the past. We explored new restaurants, took long walks, and even revisited old haunts that held special memories. I could see her making an effort to be open and honest, and I began to let my guard down little by little. However, it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were nights when I would wake up in a cold sweat, haunted by images of her with Tom. I would find myself spiraling into a pit of jealousy and anger, and Jessica would be there, patiently reassuring me that she was committed to making things right. It was a constant struggle, but as time passed, the moments of joy began to outweigh the dark ones. One evening, a few months after our initial confrontation, we found ourselves sitting on the couch, our bodies close but our hearts still guarded. As we watched a movie, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I turned to her, taking her hand in mine. "Jessica," I said softly, "I've been thinking about us. I know it's still a work in progress, but I can see that you're trying, and I'm starting to feel hopeful about our future." Her eyes lit up and she squeezed my hand. "Really? That means so much to me. I've been scared that you wouldn't let me back in." "I'm still cautious, but I'm willing to give us a chance," I replied. "It won't be easy, and there will be bumps along the way. But I believe we can make it through." That night we talked for hours, sharing our fears and hopes for the future. We both understood that the road ahead would require hard work and a commitment to honesty. But for the first time in a long time, I felt optimistic about our relationship. As the months rolled into a year, we continued to make strides. We established boundaries, rebuilt trust, and slowly learned to communicate openly about our feelings. Jessica took initiative in her therapy, and I began to open up more about my own struggles with trust. It was an ongoing journey, but each small victory brought us closer together. Eventually, we decided to take a vacation together, a chance to reconnect without the weight of our daily lives. We traveled to a cozy cabin in the mountains, surrounded by nature. Sitting by the fireplace one evening, I looked into Jessica's eyes and saw a flicker of the love I had once felt so strongly. It was as if we were rediscovering each other all over again, and it filled me with hope. "Thank you for being patient with me," she said, her voice soft and sincere. "I know I don't deserve it, but I appreciate you giving me another chance." "I believe in second chances," I replied. "We both have work to do, but I think we can emerge from this stronger than before." With time, we began to heal piece by piece. The scars of betrayal would always remain, but they became a part of our story, a reminder of how far we had come and how resilient our love could be. I learned that forgiveness isn't a destination. It's a journey, one that requires effort and understanding from both sides. As I reflected on everything that had transpired, I came to realize that I had emerged from the experience transformed. I was more resilient, more aware of my own needs, and more willing to fight for what I believed in. Life was unpredictable and relationships were complex, but through it all, I learned the importance of honesty, communication, and the strength that can come from facing adversity together. And while the future remained uncertain, I knew one thing for sure. Jessica and I were determined to navigate the challenges ahead, not just as a couple, but as partners committed to rebuilding a love that had once felt irreparably broken. Together, we would forge a new path, one grounded in trust, respect, and the unwavering belief that love can indeed conquer all.